With each new season, I love to check out Kirklands.com to see what is gonna be on trend and also to fill my cart with some of the latest and greatest beautiful pieces for my decor. However, by the time I get to the end and I check my cart total, I have to pump the brakes because my bank account would not like that. So for that reason, today I am sharing 10 different DIY dupes that are Kirkland's inspired to give you that high-end look for a fraction of the cost. So stay tuned. This is Whiskey and Whit. My name's Whitney, and on this channel I love to share DIY and budget home decor that includes tips, tricks, and tutorials all around creating a DIY home that you love. So if you like to DIY, be sure to hit subscribe down below so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video. I also want to give a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. We will talk more about them in a little bit, but before we do, let's get into the DIYs.
Up first is this more modern take on traditional nutcrackers. They have a black and a white one. They're both wood and they were $25. Now I wanted these so bad, but I could not spend 50 bucks on two of them. And so I was literally walking through Hobby Lobby one day and I found these. I was so excited. They are $10 in the store regular price, but all of Hobby Lobby's Christmas stuff right now is on sale for 50% off. And so I got a $10 one for $5. They also had smaller ones, so the one on the left is $4.50, and then they had a 6-pack. So I grabbed all of them to bring them home and show you the different sizes and what you could do with them. So left is the $5 one, then the middle is $4.50, and then the smallest one came in that multi-pack. I went through with a variety of different colors of spray paint to cover up my wood pieces. You could absolutely hand paint these. That just seemed like a nightmare with all the little nooks and crannies to me, so I thought spray paint was the way to go, and it worked out quite well. I used flat black, but if you want a shiny sheen on it, then make sure that you go with the gloss spray paint. I also did one little one in red, and then also some green ones with this Hunt Club green I've been using all season. It's such an easy project, but these make such a fun transformation. If black and white aren't your vibe, you could definitely go with some more traditional colors. Here are the smaller ones. I did in a few different colors, so I would have them for tiered trays and things like that. And here's a quick comparison of the tallest to smallest. I was able to take their $24.99 inspiration and recreate it for $5 each. So that is 20% of the overall cost, or 80% off, which I think is awesome. And also, I was able to create all of these for $25, which would have been the price of one of the Kirklands. Win. Project number 2 is inspired by this beautiful metal nativity scene, but it is $40, so we are going to dupe it with Dollar Tree supplies. Grab yourself one of their little trays as well as one of these 3D cutouts. Hobby Lobby also has them if you can't find the Dollar Tree version. And I started by staining the bottom box with some dark walnut stain by Minwax just to give it that warm wood tone. Then I'm taking some flat black spray paint and spray painting all of my unfinished wood pieces for my nativity front and back and let them dry. When everything is dry, bring it back inside and it's time to assemble. So for this, I decided to use some of the gel super glue from Dollar Tree because it holds so well. I haven't used this before and I just used it recently because Megan at Glue Guns and Roses talks about it all the time and I am definitely a convert. So grab some of this at Dollar Tree the next time you are there. Just adding a little bit to the bottom and then sticking it where I want to let it set. I'm using some random pieces from around my craft area and just setting everything up. The cool thing here is if you want to do it in a line, you could put this on a paint stick, but I decided to set it up like this. And then my last step was to just take some jute twine and tie it around the box because the bottom looked a little blah to me, but you could leave it as is. If you have a Cricut, you could cut out something, or you could handwrite "Oh Holy Night," "Silent Night," whatever strikes your fancy. I also think this is great if you want to incorporate a nativity set at a great price point and with a really small footprint. So their inspiration, $40. Mine is much smaller, but I can deal with that for the $3 price tag. For project number 3, we're going to tackle a wreath, and it is not hard to find a super expensive wreath from Kirkland's. This one is beautiful, but it's $180. So I hit up the Hobby Lobby greenery section. This is all within their Christmas stuff. I found these really pretty red berries that gave me a similar vibe to the inspiration. I also was able to find some frosted berries in a pick form. And then I originally was gonna take these greenery picks that I could get for $1.50 and create my own wreath. But then after I went to Hobby Lobby this day, I also went to Walmart and found this gorgeous wreath that already had the pine cones in it and everything. It's a 24-inch wreath, and I got this for $12.96. So this thing is beautiful as is, and my plan is to attach everything with jute twine, so then that way I could take the red off and use it for winter well past. So we will get more bang for our buck that way. So here is that pick that I got for $6 that has some kind of snow flocked vibe to it. I'm cutting off about 4 or 5 little sprigs with my miter shears, and I'm going to start inserting it into the wreath. As you can see here, this wreath has a pretty decent flow around the outside. If you're looking at it this way, it is a clockwise flow. So I'm tucking in the pieces that I cut off so that it fits with that flow. Now to hook them to the wreath, I'm just taking some jute twine and making sure that I'm not like holding down a ton of the other branches, but kind of weave it through so that you have jute twine to tie on those little berry sprigs we just put in there. I like to tie it pretty tight so it's not going to fall out, but the jute twine also is going to blend in with that brown like wreath form in the background, so it's going to look just like it was meant to be there. After I have my red berries where I want them, then I grabbed my red and white berries and did one kind of to the top right, kind of 2 o'clock, and one to the bottom left. Now our wreath is coming together, but we have to do something about those bells. I loved that element, and I didn't have anything at home that I thought I could make over until I was in my basement and saw some Solo cups, and I thought this is gonna work. So I did 2 coats of white chalk paint, and then I painted the insides black so they looked like a bell. Once those were dry, they looked just like a bell. I didn't need them to function, so I didn't worry about anything on the inside. And I just added a little strip of hot glue on the back of one of the cups and took some Dollar Tree jute twine and wrapped it around to get that kind of like rustic feel to the bottom of my faux bells. Once I was done wrapping, I just took the end and hooked it to that hot glue that I still had left over, and my bells were ready to go. Now to hook them to the wreath, I decided to use some of this white nautical rope. I wish I had not like the actual jute colored, but you know, we're working with what we have. I took a hobby knife and cut a slit in the bottom of my cup so I could insert my rope, and you just want it to be big enough that you can push the rope through there. It will catch with how thick the rope is. I tried to make a bow work here, but I just love the look of this wreath without a bow, so I decided to scrap that from the original inspiration. You could absolutely add a bow, but I decided not to. And to hook on my bells, I just took my nautical rope, wrapped it around the top of my wreath, and then gave it a quick little tie. When they were in there, they were a little too long, so to fix that, I just popped out the ends and trimmed them, just so I didn't have to untie and retie it back to the wreath. I am in love with this wreath. These could rival the ones that you see at Michael's or even Hobby Lobby pre-made. This Walmart base is amazing, but if you can't find the one at Walmart, Joann's and Hobby Lobby, a ton of other places have great greenery and things to choose from at a really great price point. I was pretty proud of the Solo Cup makeover because the bells look just like the picture. And here, mine isn't exactly the same, but I was able to get a similar vibe that matches my aesthetic for about 23 bucks all in. I'll take a $23 wreath that looks this great over a $180 one any day.
Let's take a quick pause and talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. I love sharing them with you guys because if you watch my videos, you are a creative, and Skillshare is an online platform. It's a website that has a ton of different classes that you can take and learn about a variety of different topics like photography, design, lifestyle, business. They even have some on crafting. And what I like about it is it is a full class. So from start to finish, they're gonna teach you a ton of different things. And then at the end, you have a quick little project that will help kind of tie it all together. It's been about a year since I've been working with Skillshare, and in that time I have taken a ton of their classes. I started doing some interior design stuff, I did iPhone photography, which I loved, and lately I've been really digging into Pinterest and the strategy and the algorithm behind that platform and how it works. I would definitely recommend this course that I just got done taking. The cool thing is, just in time for the holidays, Skillshare is giving the first 1,000 people that click the link down in my description a free trial of their premium membership, so you can head in there, try out some classes, and see if you like it. I also think this would make a great gift for the creative in your life, so be sure to check the description box for that link so you can get a free month of Skillshare Premium. Now let's get back into the DIYs.
For this next one, we are going to DIY the Santa tray, and it has to be one of my favorites in the whole video. This, I ended up making work with a piece of wood from our scrap pile. This is 3/4 inch plywood I had left over from my nightstand build that I did this summer. If you don't have a scrap wood pile, I suggest checking out at your hardware store their kind of as-is wood section. This is Menards and they call it value wood, but it's basically pieces that they've cut down anywhere under 3 feet that you can buy. This piece right here would work great for it, and they were selling it for $2.19 because they just want to get rid of it. So be sure to check that area. You can get some cheap wood that will stain up really nicely. Irregardless of where you're getting that wood, make sure that you give it a really good sand. A, that will help so you don't get splinters, and B, it will help the stain take to your wood a lot better. So the inspiration had a lighter color stain, but you guys know dark walnut has my heart, so I decided to go ahead and do that here, but you can do whatever stain you want. You could also paint this as well. Once my stain had dried, I grabbed some handles for my tray, and I'm actually going to use different handles for the end project, but this will help. You want to put your handles down and measure, because when you're creating the stencil to put the text on there, you don't want to make it the full width or height of your wood, because you're going to cover it with your handles and then it's going to cut off your letters, which is no bueno. So I ended up giving myself about an inch so that I'd have a 1/2 inch on either side, but go ahead and measure and kind of use your best judgment on what size that you want, because with scrap wood or whatnot, it's not going to be the same. Then I used my Cricut to cut out on some scrap permanent vinyl this stencil so that I could stencil it onto the tray. You could absolutely do a white decal or whatever color that you want and then seal over the top of the decal. I decided I wanted to go for the painted look, but it is personal preference. I'm applying this to my wood with my Expressions vinyl transfer tape, which I will link down below. You can use either the paper or this is the clear, and I like this because it's not as sticky, so when you're applying a stencil like this, it's not going to rip up anything that you're putting down. My last step before I get painting is to apply some painter's tape to any areas that are kind of close to the edge, because I don't trust myself not to get paint outside of the stencil and ruin my piece. Before I paint, I'm also adding a thin layer with just a small paintbrush of Mod Podge just over the top. Even though I'm using permanent vinyl here, I just like the extra insurance essentially to make sure that my stencil is down. Once it is dry, then I'm just taking one of these disposable makeup sponges that I get at Walmart, and I'm going to sponge some white paint over the top. I'm doing a stippling motion, so up and down. If you pull it or put too much paint on the top, then that's when you get the bleeding. So I'm going up and down, 3 light coats. And then I'm going with the grain to peel off my stencil. So because the grain is going vertically here, that's how I pulled it. The last step is to remove any of those little bits. So I'm using my weeding tool and I'm kind of going parallel with the wood versus kind of Captain Hook at it, because that will make it so you don't take chunks out of your wood. Just be careful and you'll be just fine. I also get questions on when to peel. I like to let it dry about halfway. That way you're not going to pop off any of the paint. You're also going to have a less chance of smearing the paint everywhere. Now, because we're going to be putting food on this, I decided to seal it. So I did 2 coats of this triple thick polyurethane, let it completely dry in between, and then you can sand down if you have any weird rough edges. You want to make sure that you're using a bristle brush versus a foam brush, because it will bubble up with a foam brush and nobody wants that. And then when my sealant was dry, I found these little industrial kind of pipe handles at Menards a while back, lost them in my garage for another project, went and bought another set. So when I found these again, I decided to use them. So I'm just gonna go through, mark where I want my handles, make sure you're measuring and make sure everything's even where you want it. And then I'm using just the hardware and the little screws that come with it to screw on my handles. I like to drill and put one side of the handle in with the screw and then measure the second one, just because you want to make sure that it lines up directly. So I don't drill both holes at once, personal preference, but I think that helps me. Once everything is in there and nice and tight, you've got a cute little tray. I also like the size. It's not too big for storage, but it's got really cute little circles and instructions where everything goes. So here we'll probably leave out milk, and here is a cookie that we're loving lately, sea salt caramel. And then I just threw some Annie's little Teddy Graham, but they're bunnies on there. You could do whatever you want, but because it's sealed, it will be really easy to just take a wet cloth and just wipe over the top and kind of clean everything off. But this thing is so cute, and I cannot wait to use it with Finn for Christmas Eve and Santa. This next one came directly from you guys. When I did my fall Kirkland dupe video, so many of you commented on this particular fall essentials hanger and said you have to do one for Christmas. So here I am obliging all of those requests. So I started with some of these 5-gallon paint stir sticks, and I actually got these from Menards for free from the paint counter, but you can also buy them for a couple bucks from Walmart, Home Depot, etc. And my first step is to take 4 of them and to trim off the little handle nub so that you just have one piece. This is about 17.5 inches for all of them. I just measure and cut them all so they're the same. Then I went through with my little sanding block and sanded down any of the rough edges, and then went outside with dark walnut stain and stained all of my pieces. Now, you only need 4 for this project. I ended up doing 6 because I made a Polar Express version of this for Finn for his bedroom because he's obsessed with trains right now. So while all of the stained stuff was drying, I used some black heat transfer vinyl and I cut out a Christmas version of my essentials list, which will be available over on my blog. The link is down in the description, and went through and weeded it out. Now, if you are new to Cricut and need help with how to cut out heat transfer vinyl, I will link up above my materials guide so you can check that out and learn more about heat transfer vinyl. I won't go into it today, but you can check that out and it will give you everything you need to know to cut this out on this particular material. Once I had it all weeded to what I wanted, then I grabbed this canvas drop cloth, and it's the same one I used for the last project. I've gotten so many projects out of this thing. You can get one of these for about $7 at Walmart, and you get a ton of fabric. And so I'm just freehand cutting a piece to fit my decal. I ended up taking this in Design Space and cutting it to 11.5 inches wide. So that's the sizing that I ended up doing. I wanted it as big as the mat, but you can make it whatever size you want. Then I got it where I wanted it and pressed it at 320 degrees. You can also use your iron, and then let it cool and peeled off my carrier sheet. Once I peeled that off, I realized some of the little dots of the eyes, because they were so little, didn't press all the way. So I just went through with a little marker and put it in there myself, and you literally can't tell. And then the last step is to assemble your hanger. So I took some hot glue onto one of my stained sticks and applied it at the top. And I like to give myself a little bit of extra space, so don't worry about that overhang. We'll just trim it. But then that you can always cut off some of the drop cloth. You can't add it on. So that way it'll help you make sure everything's spaced correctly. After the top and bottom is glued on, I flipped it over and then took some hot glue across the bottom piece and stuck a second one, kind of sandwiched the canvas in between to weigh it down. And then for the top, you're going to do the same thing, except for also adding 2 little dots of hot glue to add some jute twine for a hanger. I just doubled up some twine, so then that way I could hang it wherever I wanted it. Then add some more hot glue and stick your 4th little paint stick to the top. Once your glue is cooled, you are good to go. I really love this festive hanger. Thank you for everybody that put in that request, and now you can make your own too. You guys know I've been loving making free printables, and there are so many things on Kirkland's website where you can get really pretty artwork, but it's like 35, 40, 50, 60 bucks. So here is a quick way to dupe that. I love to get larger frames from Goodwill just because they are usually really good quality wood. You can get them for a couple bucks, and you can usually get some larger ones too, like these that I'm going to craft with today. The main thing you want to do is when you get them home, just make sure you give everything, the frame, the glass, a good clean, but after that you are good to go. So for the first one, I am only able to print up to 8.5 by 11 on my printer. And so I decided to use some Dollar Tree wrapping paper to create a faux mat for the frame. I just cut a piece of this tartan wrapping paper to the size of my glass, and then I used some double stick tape to stick it onto the back of the frame. And then for my printable, I used my new Epson 8500 Incotake printer. This thing is a photo grade quality printer. I'm so excited to get to play around with it and use it. But I cut out this Santa head and used some double stick tape to just stick it in the center. And then I trimmed off any of the extra paper. The last step is to just reassemble your frame, and you have this really cute modern but also a traditional, slightly vintage Santa print that you can put on any shelf, and it was only a couple bucks. I also did the same thing with another frame that was kind of an orangey tint to the wood. I just gave the outside a quick paint with some white paint, and then instead of using a printed wrapping paper, I used a craft paper from Dollar Tree, and then used this Let Heaven and Nature Sing print in the center. This one's also available over on my blog, so all of the free downloads, just head over there. There'll be a full folder for you to go ahead and grab everything so that you can print these yourself. Another place I love to get frames is the clearance section at stores, especially Hobby Lobby. They had a ton of options this day. I ended up finding some really pretty 8x10 frames. Now, I mentioned my new Epson EcoTank ET8500 printer. I was so excited when they reached out and asked if they could send me one of these to try out. It is a photo quality printer, and you guys, I haven't even been able to scratch the surface of all the cool things that it can do, but I was printing these on some velvety paper. It's one of those like tanks where you fill up all of the different inks yourself, but it prints so clearly. I've already printed out some of our family pictures. I'm so excited to do more with this thing, so stay tuned. But I found this beautiful How the Grinch Stole Christmas print over on the Navage patch. They have so many great printables. If you love mine, you will love theirs. I will link them down below. But I printed out this Grinch one, as well as a patent print for Christmas lights. These you can find at Pottery Barn for so much money. So I just printed them out, trimmed them down, and put them in these beautiful Hobby Lobby frames. It's so simple, but it turns out so nice, and you can get these book pages from them as well as the patent prints in this chalkboard vibe. They also have just a kind of yellowish, and then there's also a kind of antique brown paper. So whatever look matches your frame or your vibe, you can do so many different options, and I love their printables. So like I said, I will link that down below, but these are gorgeous. And the frames were $5 from Hobby Lobby. So that's really all it cost me, and it was awesome. Now, back when we talked about the wreath, I mentioned that it was easy to find some overpriced wreaths. Well, it is also easy to find some floral arrangements, tablescapes, tons of stuff with greenery. So here's how you can dupe it. This stuff is from Hobby Lobby, but again, you can really get this from anywhere. I'm using some of these $1.50 greenery picks that I got from Hobby Lobby, as well as the rest of that pick that we used for the wreath. I also like that because then the stuff kind of coordinates, so it looks like it comes from a set. I'm going to use my miter shears to chop off the rest of the pieces so that I can insert them, and then I'm going to take the bottom of these greenery picks and bend it around my hand just so that it sits better in this Hobby Lobby container. I got this for $10 and it's shorter, but their whole section, if you catch it when it's 50% off, you can get really anything. They've got milk jugs, they've got bigger pitchers, there are a ton of different options. So just keep your eyes peeled when that stuff goes on sale. And then with the inspiration, it was a little too kind of messy and wild, but I did like that the red picks were a little bit taller than the greenery, so I stuck with that. Here is what it ended up turning out as, and I really like this. This is good to fill out a shelf or a table, and really you can add whatever greenery you want. You don't have to have them be up as high, but again, I was going for the look of the inspiration, and I absolutely love these little red frosted berries that match my wreath. So theirs was about $47 for their arrangement. My similar look cost me about $15, and you can make this a lot cheaper if you go with a Dollar Tree vase and spray paint it white. So another option there. Another project that was a hit in my fall video was one of these lanterns, and here is what it looked like for fall. And I know a lot of you made this, so I wanted to give you an idea of how you could make it over using some super affordable greenery for Christmas. So as a reminder, here is what it looked like when it was all done. If you haven't seen that fall video, I will link that so you can go see the tutorial on how to put together the actual lantern. But then I'm just adding either a regular candle here, or you can add a LED candle if you want it to light up. And then I am taking my miter shears and I'm just cutting off each of these little branches. This was $1.50 at Hobby Lobby, so that's all I'm needing to switch this out to give it a Christmas look. Maybe an extra $1 if you want to add some red berries, but I'm just going to go with the neutral green look so that this can transition seamlessly from Christmas to winter. Then I'm just going to insert my little pieces around in a circle to look like a faux wreath, and literally that is it. So quick and easy, and this lantern can last so many seasons. It is just a Dollar Tree box and some square dowel rods, so check out that tutorial if you want to make one yourself. Especially because stuff that looks similar from Kirkland's is like 80 bucks, and this we can put together for under $5. I love having both sentimental and then decorative ornaments on our tree, and so when I saw this little present stack, I knew I could recreate it. Dollar Tree's wood section is expanding pretty much daily. I've been able to find some of these at my store, so this is just a 10-inch, basically 1x2, but don't worry if you can't find it at Dollar Tree, you can get a large 1x2 for a couple bucks at your hardware store. I'm going through and measuring the sizes that I want for my boxes. What I ended up doing is about 2.5, 3.5, and then 4.5 inches. So it gives me about a 1/2 inch on each side when I stack up my presents. Once I have all of my lengths decided, then I grabbed my miter box. This is like 20 bucks from Amazon. It comes with this yellow box as well as the saw, and it's nice because you can just stick the saw into this little guide here and just saw away. It takes me just a couple minutes to cut these pieces apart. You don't have to get out a big saw if you have one. If you don't have a big saw, it's even more helpful. You can cut little pieces like this rather quickly. So I will link this down below. It's definitely a must-have in my book if you want to make small decorative things like this with wood. Every time I use a miter box, I also have my little Dollar Tree sanding block handy next to me so I can sand down the edges. Just make sure you're careful when you're working with these rough edges, and the sanding block will take it right down. You don't need a power sander or anything crazy for this. Then if you are going exactly for the dupe from Kirkland's, you're going to need white and black paint for your presents. I also grabbed some red because I wanted to create a more traditional kind of ornament, because I know not everybody loves the sleek black and white modern look like I've been loving this year, so don't worry, I've got 2 different versions for you. For my direct dupe, the bottom and the top present are going to be white and the middle is going to be black. And then I ended up cutting just a small little piece for a 4th present on my more traditional colored one. And so I did red, white, red, white. For my presents, I decided to go through with just a really fine black Sharpie and create the lines to mimic the wrapping paper that was on the inspiration. If you want to freehand it, fine. You could also use a ruler to create more straight lines. I thought that the hand-drawn look made it look more handmade, which I liked, but it's totally up to you. You could also opt to just wrap these in some wrapping paper, so there's a ton of different options with these. On my traditional one, I added some lines, but then I also decided to wrap a piece of painter's tape around to create kind of a candy cane-like motif. I painted the areas that were exposed white and then peeled off my painter's tape. Then once everything's done, the last step is assembly, so I just put some hot glue. I like to use the Gorilla Glue sticks for my hot glue gun just because they work with wood and plastic and I think they bond really nice. So I'm adding my black boxed present above my big white striped one and then my smaller white one to the top. I took some jute twine and wrapped it around just like I was wrapping presents, and I made sure to have enough slack so that I could just tie the top into the little hanger. I added a little bit of greenery as well as a little jute twine bow to the top, and that present was done. I did the same thing on my other one, but I used baker's twine to tie it up. They're super cute, and you could definitely customize these with people's names, a ton of different options. for the $1 price tag versus the $8.99 from Kirkland's, you can make a ton of these for the price of one. The past few years, Kirkland's has had these bow ornaments, and every year when I see them in store, I think I could totally make them. And so they are $7.99, and we're gonna dupe them for a lot less. So I went to Hobby Lobby and grabbed some of these rolls. This sign says 40% off, but it was before they dropped it. It's 50% off, so you can get these rolls for $3, which is gonna be so much cheaper for this project. So on top of that roll of burlap, you're just gonna need some wired ribbon of your choice. I did black and red buffalo check, as well as some candy cane ones that you'll see in a little bit. The main reason that I wanted to do these was for the tree that I'm gonna put in our dining room that's gonna be kind of gingerbread Candyland themed, but I also wanted to show you how to do these with the buffalo check to dupe the Kirkland's look. So I'm taking some strips, and you could cut anywhere between 24 and 36 inches, depending on how wide you want them to be. And that is going to be the base of your bow. Once you have your piece cut, you're going to take it and fold it like a awareness ribbon, like you see those breast cancer awareness ribbons, and then you're going to just pinch the center to create the bows at the top, as you can see here. Then with that pinch, you're going to take some jute twine and just tie it around the center to get your bow to stay. You want to make sure that you give yourself enough slack on this piece of jute twine that you can then hang it on your tree. After that's done, you're going to repeat the same thing with a piece of wired ribbon. You can use whatever matches your decor. Do the same thing, awareness ribbon, pinch the center, and then hook it with some jute twine. Then take your jute twine, extra tails, and tie it around the center of your burlap piece, and then you can fluff and trim the ends as needed. I like to do bows like these for my wreaths all the time, but these are also great for ornaments. And if you don't like the jute twine in the center, you can just take another piece of ribbon and cover the center. For my dining room tree, I took the larger piece of burlap and cut it in half to just make some smaller versions. You can do the exact same thing with the same wired ribbon, just make it a little bit smaller. And here I'm using some candy cane ribbons to do the same. You can make a ton of these with one roll of burlap and just a roll of ribbon. You can get that really from anywhere, and it is super quick and easy to put these together. I'm so excited. My tree just arrived today, so stay tuned to my Instagram so that you can see my dining room tree when it's done. And my final project is another one that came from you guys. So many of you asked me to dupe this sign. So I'm going to show you how to do it with the least amount of power tools that I know how. So step one is to get your wood. I went and grabbed a 1 by 16 by 3 feet piece of wood. So it's going to be 36 inches tall from Menards for $10. And then I had some 1 by 2s at home that I was going to use, but if you don't have them, you're going to want either 1 by 2 pieces or 1 by 2 furring strips. My best tips are to grab from the back and also make sure that you look down your piece of wood like this to make sure it's not too curved. I've got a full video of wood sign tips, so be sure to check that out if you want more of my secrets. Then here I am going to create the border for my sign before I get painting. And with this, I am going to do it with my miter box. I tell you guys all the time, you could easily make wood signs with your miter box, so I'm not getting my big saw out for this. We are going to cut it with the miter box. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the long ends, measure and cut the 2 pieces to be the exact length of the sign. Then once those are cut, I'm going to measure and cut a piece that goes the short ends, but you also want to make sure it overlaps those 2 pieces of trim you just cut. So then that way you've got a fluid piece that goes from end to end. Once those pieces are all cut, then you're going to sand them down. You could definitely sand them by hand, but by the time I was done sawing those, I was tired, so I wanted to use the power tool, but you don't need it. Then once everything was sanded down, I stained all of my framing pieces as well as the back of my sign so it'll look finished when it's done in dark walnut. Then you're going to want to decide whatever color you want your sign to be. Mine is going to be a white background, so I grabbed some white chalk paint and painted the entire thing. Then I created this design in Canva, so you will be able to download it over on my blog. And to get it to cut to the size of my sign, because it is 3 feet tall, you're not going to be able to cut it all on one mat. So what I did is created a shape the size of my mat. I'm cutting on a larger mat, so a 12 by 24 mat can cut 11.5 by 23.5 inches. You got to allot for the ½ inch either way. So I made a shape that size, and then I went through and basically sliced up my design. So I'm taking this shape, here's a mat, cut this, and I had to cut it into a few different pieces. But then once you do that, it'll section it off onto mats for you, and you'll be able to go ahead and use it. Once everything was cut out, I went through and weeded it, and I decided instead of stenciling just to do this as a decal. Now granted, there's so many words here, so it was kind of a beast to weed, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So after I was done, I wasn't as frustrated. But keep in mind, when you're doing a sign this big, it's gonna take you a little bit to weed. It probably took me about a ½ an hour. Then it was time to assemble my sign. So this is just like sticking a smaller decal on anything, it's just in a larger scale. So I'm taking my Expressions Vinyl Clear Transfer Tape, which isn't as sticky, so it doesn't peel up my wood. You could also use the paper transfer tape, and I am applying it to all my pieces. Once it's applied, I'm gonna get everything kind of where I want it, and then I'm gonna start applying. You can definitely use any type of painter's tape or anything if you need to mark it, but I've been doing signs for years, so I kind of have a way of just eyeballing it. But if you need to measure it out, feel free, by all means, do that. I made sure to use extra pressure and watch to make sure no little pieces were popping up, but it stuck to my chalk paint really well. And when everything was taken off, my sign was almost done, but I decided to go through with a polyacrylic and just seal it down. I store my signs down in our basement, and sometimes the humidity fluctuates, so I just want to make sure that none of the signs or the vinyl will kind of pop off, even though it's permanent. Just wanted to make sure. Once my sealant was dry, then I grabbed my framing pieces and I just go through with a nail gun and make sure that whichever way I'm applying the border, it's flush. So here I want my frame to stick out to the front of the sign, so I'm making sure that piece is flush with the back of my sign, and I'm just going through and taking my nail gun and attaching it. You can go through with a hammer and nails if you want. The nail gun is obviously a lot more helpful, but you don't absolutely need it. You can use some trim nails to attach it. So keep that in mind if you don't have power tools. After you do the two sides, then you're going to take your pieces that overlap, and I like to put it on the ground to give myself some good leverage to apply it. Gave it some more nails, and my sign was good to go. You can add a hanger if you want to put it on the wall, but I plan on either putting this on a table or a shelf, so I don't need it, but I could always add it in the future if I want. The wood piece itself was $10. The frame, you're probably looking at $5. So $15 for your wood, and then whatever, if you've got stain and vinyl on hand, then you're looking at a $15 sign. If not, you're looking at probably about $25, but compared to the Kirkland's cost, you can customize it for what you want and get it for much cheaper. And when somebody says they like it, you can say, I made that.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found some inspiration in this video. As always, if you recreate these projects, be sure to share it on social media. I love seeing what you guys recreate and how you use my files. I love it. I will also link all the files that I used in this video down below, as well as a quick tutorial on how to download my files if you haven't done that before. Thank you for watching. A huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. And if you're new, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!